The Chicago winter bit through Isabella Diane Warner's wool coat as she hurried down Michigan Avenue, her breath creating small clouds in the frigid morning air. Above her, skyscrapers pierced the steel-gray sky like ancient sentinels, their glass facades reflecting the weak January sun. At 25, she moved through the city with the practiced ease of someone who had learned to carry both dreams and burdens with equal grace. "Just once. I'd love to be early," she muttered, checking her watch. The prestigious architectural firm where she worked as a junior architect demanded perfection, and today's client presentation wouldn't wait. Her portfolio, tucked safely under her arm, contained weeks of work, designs that married functionality with the kind of beauty that made people pause and remember why cities could still feel like magic. The L train rumbled overhead, its familiar rhythm a counterpoint to the click of her heels on concrete. Isabella adjusted her scarf, fingertips brushing against the delicate silver chain at her neck. The pendant, her mother's last gift, felt cool against her skin. Some days, it seemed to carry the weight of all their family's broken pieces. Her phone buzzed. Ruby's name lit up the screen, and Isabella's heart squeezed with familiar worry. "Grandma, everything okay?" "Baby girl, I'm fine." Ruby Warner's voice came through warm and rich like honey and tea. "Just wanted to remind you about your daddy's birthday next week. I know you're busy with that big presentation, but—" "I remember," Isabella cut in, gentler than she meant to. Of course she remembered. How could she forget the day that now carried so much more than celebration? "I'll be there, Gran. Promise. He asks about you, you know, even on his bad days." Isabella swallowed hard, her free hand instinctively moving to her wrist, fingers tracing the small tattoo there. Resilient. The word had become her armor, but some battles still left bruises. "I know, Gran. Listen, I'm almost at work. Can I call you later? Go shine, baby. Show them what a Warner can do." The call ended, but Ruby's words echoed in Isabella's mind as she pushed through the revolving doors of the Thornton and Associates building. Warner, once. That name had meant something different in Chicago's business circles. Before the fall, before her father, brilliant, proud William Warner, had been crushed under the heel of corporate politics and Hayes Industries' ruthless expansion, the elevator carried her to the 47th floor, where floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Lake Michigan. On clear days, the water stretched like liquid silver to the horizon. Today, it churned dark and restless, matching her mood. "Morning is—" Mia Patel, her closest friend at the firm, intercepted her with 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this. The clients are already in the conference room, and Russell's doing that thing with his tie." Isabella accepted the coffee gratefully, the nervous straightening, like he's trying to strangle himself in slow motion. Mia fell into step beside her, dark ponytail swinging. "But seriously, you've got this. Those designs, they're incredible. They better be. I haven't seen my kitchen in weeks except to make mac and cheese." The conference room loomed ahead, its glass walls offering no shelter from the scrutiny within. Isabella paused, just for a moment, to check her reflection. Her curls were cooperating today, pulled back in a neat twist that meant business. The charcoal grey suit, carefully chosen, like everything in her life, projected the perfect balance of creativity and professionalism. Miss Warner Russell Bennett, senior partner, appeared at her elbow, ready to dazzle them. She nodded, squaring her shoulders. This was her element. Here, in the language of steel and glass, concrete and vision, she knew exactly who she was. Here she could rebuild anything except perhaps the things that mattered most. The presentation flowed smoothly. Isabella watched her designs come to life on the screen behind her, explaining how each element served both form and function. The clients, representatives from a major downtown development project, leaned forward in their chairs, caught up in the possibility she was painting. Then the door opened. "Sorry to interrupt." The voice was male, confident, carrying the kind of authority that came from never having to question its right to exist. "I heard there was an interesting presentation about the Riverside development." Isabella turned, a professional smile fixed in place, and felt the world tilt sideways. She didn't need the whispered reactions around the room to know who he was. Talon Everett Hayes, the Prince of Hayes Industries, the company that had torn her family apart 7 years ago. He was taller than she expected, with the kind of presence that made expensive suits look casual and boardrooms feel small. Storm grey eyes met hers with interest, then confusion at her obvious tension. Of course, he wouldn't know her. The Warners were just one of many casualties in his father's empire building. "Please," she managed, her voice steady despite the thunder of her heart. "Sir, we were just discussing the environmental impact studies." For the next 20 minutes, Isabella continued her presentation, hyper-aware of his every movement, the way he studied each slide with genuine interest, the slight tapping of his fingers when something caught his attention, the intensity of his focus when she spoke about sustainable materials and community integration. She could feel Mia's concerned glances, but this was what Warners did. They persevered. They finished what they started, even when their hands shook and their minds screamed at the injustice of it all. The clients loved it. Of course they did. Excellence had been Isabella's shield for so long. She knew how to make it shine. As handshakes were exchanged and congratulations offered, she began gathering her materials, desperate to escape. "Ms. Warner," his voice again, closer now, "I'd love to discuss your ideas about urban renewal. Perhaps over coffee." Isabella looked up, meeting those grey eyes directly for the first time. In them she saw no recognition, no understanding of the weight this moment carried, just professional interest and perhaps a hint of something more personal. It would be so easy to say yes, to pretend the past was just that, past. But the silver pendant at her throat seemed to burn, and somewhere across town, her father sat in his small apartment, still wrapped in the shadows of what Hayes Industries had stolen from him. "I'm afraid I'm fully booked, Mr. Hayes." The words came out cool, professional, and final. "If you'll excuse me." She gathered her things and walked out, spine straight, head high. Behind her, she could feel his puzzled gaze, but she didn't look back, couldn't look back. In the bathroom, Isabella finally allowed herself to breathe. Her reflection stared back at her, composed on the surface but with storms brewing underneath. She touched the small tattoo on her wrist again, resilient. Her phone buzzed, Ruby again, as if her grandmother's sixth sense had felt her distress across the city. "Hey, Gran, I made your favorite sweet potato pie, baby. Come by after work." Isabella closed her eyes, letting her grandmother's love wash over her. Yeah, I'd like that. Bring that fancy iced tea you like. We'll sit on the porch and you can tell me what's weighing on that heart of yours." "How do you always know?" Ruby's laugh crackled through the phone. "Because you're just like your daddy, carrying the world so straight-backed, sometimes you forget to breathe." Later, as Isabella made her way back to her desk, she caught a glimpse of Talon Hayes through the conference room windows. He was standing at the glass wall, staring out at the city like a man trying to solve a puzzle. For just a moment, something in his solitude spoke to her, suggesting depths beyond the Hayes name and all it represented. She pushed the thought away. In Chicago's concrete canyons, some paths were better left uncrossed, no matter how compelling the view might be from the other side. But destiny, she would soon learn, had other plans, ones that didn't care about old wounds or careful distances, and sometimes the very things we run from are the ones that finally teach us how to stand still. Talon Hayes stood at his office window in the Hayes Industries building, fingers absently tracing patterns on the cold glass. The sun was setting over Chicago, painting the sky in deep purples and oranges, but his mind kept returning to the architectural presentation from 3 days ago, more specifically, to Isabella Warner's abrupt departure and the flash of, what was it? Pain, anger, in her eyes when he'd approached her. "Your father's waiting in the conference room." His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "The quarterly board meeting starts in 10 minutes. "Thank you, Linda." Talon straightened his tie, a gesture learned from years of preparing for battle in boardrooms. His reflection in the window showed what everyone expected to see, the perfect heir to the Hayes empire, every inch the successful businessman in his tailored suit and carefully controlled expression. The elevator ride to the top floor was silent, but his mind wasn't. Something about Miss Warner's portfolio had captured his attention. Her designs weren't just buildings. They were stories told in steel and glass, spaces that seemed to understand human nature. He'd done his research since their encounter. Junior architect at Thornton & Associates, graduated top of her class, rising star in Chicago's architectural scene. But nothing in her professional history explained why she'd looked at him like he'd personally wounded her. The conference room doors opened to reveal Richard Hayes, his father, standing at the head of the long table. At 62, Richard commanded attention with the same iron grip he'd used to build Hayes Industries into a corporate giant. His silver hair and sharp features gave him an almost patrician air, but Talon knew better than anyone the calculation behind his father's polished facade. "You're late," Richard said without looking up from his papers. "Actually, I'm early." Talon took his seat, noting the slight tightening around his father's mouth at the correction. "The Maxwell Development Project looks promising. Their presentation at Thornton & Associates was impressive." "Ah yes, the Riverside development." Richard finally looked up, his pale blue eyes assessing. "Though I hear you were particularly interested in one of their junior architects." Of course he knew. Richard Hayes made it his business to know everything that might affect his empire. Isabella Warner has a unique vision for urban renewal. Her designs could revolutionize. Warner? Richard's voice turned sharp. William Warner's daughter. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Talon watched his father's face carefully, noting the micro-expressions that betrayed genuine concern. "You know the family?" "Ancient history." Richard waved his hand dismissively, but there was tension in the gesture. "Stay away from that project, Talon. I mean it. There are other developments we can invest in." Before Talon could press further, board members began filing in, and Richard transformed into the charismatic CEO, all traces of discomfort hidden behind decades of practice. But Talon had seen enough. There was a story there, one his father clearly didn't want unearthed. Across town, in a cozy craftsman-style house in Oak Park, Isabella sat with her grandmother on their covered porch, watching rain tap gentle patterns on the garden below. The sweet potato pie Ruby had promised sat half-eaten between them, and the old record player inside spun soft jazz into the evening air. "You haven't touched your pie, baby," Ruby observed, adjusting her bright yellow shawl. "That's not like you." Isabella stirred her iced tea, the lemon slice spinning lazy circles. "I met Richard Hayes' son today. Well, 3 days ago." Ruby's hands stilled in her lap. "Talon Hayes? At your firm?" "He walked into my presentation." Isabella's laugh held no humor. "Wanted to discuss my ideas over coffee, if you can believe it. He had no idea who I was." "And what did you do? What do you think I did?" "I left." Isabella stood, pacing the small porch. "God, Gran, he looked so normal, like his family hasn't spent years destroying people's lives. He probably doesn't even know about Dad, about what they did to him." Ruby watched her granddaughter with wise eyes. "Maybe he doesn't. Does it matter? He's a Hayes." Isabella stopped at the porch railing, gripping it until her knuckles whitened. "Dad lost everything because of them. His career, his confidence, nearly his mind. We almost lost the house. If you hadn't—" "Come here, child." Ruby patted the space beside her on the porch swing. When Isabella sat, she took her granddaughter's hands in hers. "Your daddy's story is his to carry, and you've been carrying it for him long enough. Don't let old wounds poison new gardens." "What does that even mean, Gran?" "It means you've got your mother's fire and your father's pride, but you've got my blood too. And Warner's. We know the difference between justice and vengeance." The next morning found Talon in his private office at dawn, his laptop open to newspaper archives from 7 years ago. William Warner's name appeared in several business articles. A rising star in corporate management, innovative strategies, glowing reviews from industry peers. Then, suddenly, nothing. It was as if the man had vanished from Chicago's business world overnight. A knock at his door interrupted his research. "Come in." Dominic Russell, his childhood friend and Hayes Industries, head of legal, entered with a thick folder. "You asked for the employee records from 2018? "Thanks." Talon reached for the folder, but Dominic held back. "Tal, what are you doing? These records were sealed for a reason. Your father—" "My father isn't always right." Talon stood, his voice carrying an edge that made Dominic step back. "William Warner, what happened to him?" Dominic sighed, placing the folder on the desk. "It was messy. Officially, he was let go during restructuring. Unofficially, there were allegations of corporate espionage. Nothing was ever proven, but the damage was done." Talon opened the folder, scanning documents that painted a picture of systematic destruction. Warner's reputation had been methodically dismantled, his career prospects poisoned throughout Chicago's business community. This isn't restructuring, Dom. This was execution. Your father had his reasons. He always does. Talon closed the folder, his decision made. I need you to find William Warner. Current address, situation, everything. Why? What are you planning? Talon thought of Isabella Warner's eyes, of the strength and hurt he'd seen there. I'm planning to understand the truth. For once in my life, I need to know what we're really built on. Later that afternoon, Isabella stood in front of her latest project model, making minute adjustments to a sustainable rooftop garden design. The office was quiet, most people having left for the day, when a delivery arrived at her desk. The package contained a single book, Revolutionary Urban Spaces, A History of Social Architecture. Inside was a handwritten note. Your presentation showed me how buildings can heal communities. I'd like to understand more. T.E.H. Isabella's first instinct was to throw the book away. Instead, she found herself opening it, fingers tracing the pages filled with examples of architecture that had transformed troubled neighborhoods into thriving communities. It was exactly the kind of work she dreamed of doing. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ruby. Remember, baby girl, new gardens. Isabella looked at the book, then at the note, feeling the weight of choices not yet made. Outside her window, Chicago's lights were coming alive, each one a story, each one a possibility. Somewhere in that glittering landscape, Talon Hayes was either an enemy to be avoided or a mystery to be understood. The question was, which truth would hurt more to discover? The Corner Bean Cafe sat tucked between two towering office buildings, a cozy refuge of exposed brick and warm wood in Chicago's concrete jungle. Isabella hadn't planned to stop here. It was 3 blocks out of her way, but her regular coffee shop was closed for renovations. She didn't believe in signs or fate, but later she would remember this moment, the split-second decision that changed everything. The morning rush had subsided, leaving only a handful of customers typing on laptops or murmuring in hushed conversations. Isabella ordered her usual, an oat milk latte with an extra shot, and found a quiet corner to review her newest designs. The book Talon had sent sat in her bag, its presence both an irritation and a temptation she'd been fighting for days. Is this seat taken? The voice made her freeze. She looked up to find Talon Hayes standing there, holding a cup of what smelled like expensive single-origin coffee. Up close, she could see the flecks of blue in his grey eyes, the slight stubble along his jaw suggesting long hours at work. Actually, I was just leaving. Isabella began gathering her papers, but his next words stopped her. William Warner. She stilled, her heart thundering against her ribs. Pam, what did you say? Your father. Talon sat down without waiting for permission. I found the files, Miss Warner. I know what happened, or at least the official version. Isabella's fingers curled around her coffee cup. Get out. Not until you hear me out. His voice was low, intense. The allegations against your father, they don't add up. Someone wanted him gone, and they made sure it happened in the most devastating way possible. And you're just figuring this out now. Bitterness crept into her voice. Where was this curiosity 7 years ago when my father was being destroyed? I was in London. Something flickered across his face. Regret. By the time I came back, it was done. But now what? Isabella leaned forward, her voice barely above a whisper. Now you want to play hero. Fix Daddy's mistakes. I don't need your help or your guilt, Mr. Hayes. This isn't about guilt. Talon ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that seemed unconscious, human. This is about truth. Something happened. Something beyond normal corporate politics. I need to understand why. Isabella studied him, really looked at him for the first time. Behind the polished exterior, she saw something unexpected, a genuine intensity, a restlessness she recognized. He was haunted too in his own way. The truth? She gave a hollow laugh. The truth is your father's company didn't just fire mine. They blacklisted him. Every door in Chicago closed. Every connection vanished. Do you know what it's like to watch someone you love just fade away? Talon's expression shifted, a shadow crossing his features. Yes, actually, I do. The raw honesty in his voice caught her off guard. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed. a reminder of her upcoming meeting with a community development group. "I have to go." She stood, gathering her things with trembling hands. "Have dinner with me." Isabella stared at him. "Excuse me?" "Dinner. A public place, your choice." Talon stood too, and she was again struck by his height, the intensity of his presence. "Let me show you what I've found. After that, if you want me to disappear, I will." She should say no. Every instinct honed by years of protecting what was left of her family screamed at her to walk away. But Ruby's words echoed in her mind. "Don't let old wounds poison new gardens." "One dinner," she found herself saying. "That's all. I'll text you the details." At her surprised look, he added, "Your work contact information is on the Thornton and Associates website." Isabella shouldered her bag, trying to ignore how her skin tingled with awareness of his proximity. "This doesn't change anything." "No," he agreed, but his eyes said something different. "It just might explain everything." Across town, in his modest apartment filled with old newspapers and fading photographs, William Warner sat in his favorite armchair, staring at a business card he hadn't seen in years. Richard Hayes's personal number was still embossed in gold on the heavy paper, a relic from a time when he'd thought they were friends. His hands shook slightly as he reached for his phone. The number had probably changed, but— "Richard, it's Bill Warner. We need to talk. He's looking into it, isn't he, your boy?" Miles away in the Hayes Industries executive suite, Richard Hayes ended the call with William Warner, his face ashen. On his desk lay a photograph he kept locked in his bottom drawer. Two younger men at a charity gala, arms around each other's shoulders, smiling without reservation. Before everything went wrong, he pressed the intercom. "Get me Dominic Russell." Now, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows through Talon's office as he spread documents across his desk. Employee records, financial reports, old emails, pieces of a puzzle that didn't quite fit together. His father's involvement was clear, but the why remained elusive. A soft knock interrupted his concentration. "Come in." Dominic entered, looking unusually serious. "Your father knows you're digging." "Good." Talon didn't look up from the papers. "Maybe he'll finally tell me the truth." "It's not that simple, Tal." Dominic closed the door. "There are things about that time, about your mother's death, that you don't understand." Talon's head snapped up. "What does my mother have to do with William Warner?" But Dominic was already backing away. "Ask your father, please, before you do something that can't be undone." Later that evening, Isabella stood in front of her closet, Ruby perched on her bed offering commentary. "The blue dress," her grandmother said decisively. "It brings out the fire in your eyes." "It's not that kind of dinner, Gran." But Isabella found herself reaching for the dress anyway. "He says he has information about Dad's case." Ruby watched her granddaughter with knowing eyes. "And that's the only reason you're going?" "Of course it is." Isabella slipped on the dress, a simple but elegant piece that made her feel both powerful and feminine. "He's a Hayes." "Mm-hmm," Ruby smiled. "And you're wearing your good perfume for a business dinner." Isabella touched the small bottle of jasmine and vanilla perfume, a birthday gift she saved for special occasions. "I want to look professional." "Baby girl," Ruby said softly, "it's okay to feel something, even if it's complicated." "I don't feel anything." But even as she said it, Isabella remembered the way Talon's eyes had held hers in the cafe, the authenticity in his voice when he spoke about finding the truth. "I can't feel anything. It would kill Dad." "Your daddy's stronger than you think." Ruby stood, adjusting Isabella's necklace, her mother's pendant. "Then so are you." At precisely 7 o'clock, Isabella walked into Adeline's, an upscale restaurant overlooking the river. The maitre d' led her to a private table where Talon already waited. He stood as she approached, and something in her chest tightened at the sight of him, in a charcoal suit that made his eyes look stormy. "You look beautiful," he said simply. Isabella took her seat, ignoring the warmth that bloomed in her cheeks. "You said you had information." "I do." Talon signaled the waiter for wine. "But first, I think we both need to understand something. This isn't just about our fathers anymore, is it?" Isabella met his gaze across the table, feeling the weight of secrets, attraction, and complicated loyalties pressing down on them both. Outside, Chicago's lights reflected on the river's dark surface, making the water look like it held all the answers. If only they were brave enough to dive deep enough to find them. The wine arrived at their table, a vintage Bordeaux that probably cost more than Isabella's weekly salary. She watched Talon decline to taste it first, instead gesturing for the waiter to pour her glass, a small gesture of respect that she filed away despite herself. "Before we start," Talon said, his voice low enough to ensure privacy in the elegant restaurant, "I want you to know that what I'm about to show you, it goes beyond your father's dismissal. There are connections I'm still trying to understand." Isabella took a sip of wine, using the moment to steady herself. "What kind of connections?" Talon reached into his leather briefcase, removing a manila folder that looked worn at the edges. 7 years ago, Hayes Industries was in the middle of a major expansion, the Maxwell Development Project, the one your firm is working on now. It was supposed to happen back then. What stopped it? Official record says environmental concerns, zoning issues. He spread several documents on the table between their untouched menus, but I found something interesting. Your father was the project lead for the original development team. Isabella leaned forward, scanning the papers. There was her father's signature, his distinctive handwriting in the margins of reports. I didn't know he was involved. He did more than that. A week before his dismissal, he filed a report. Talon slid a particular document toward her. It was buried so deep it took my team days to find it. The report was heavily redacted, but certain phrases jumped out. Structural integrity concerns, potential hazardous materials, recommended immediate suspension of project. My father was trying to stop the development. Isabella's hands trembled slightly as she turned the pages. Why? That's where it gets interesting. Talon's voice took on an edge of intensity. 2 days after this report was filed, an accident happened at one of our construction sites. 3 workers were injured. The investigation was quick, quiet, and everything was blamed on contractor negligence. And you think there's a connection? I think your father found something dangerous, something that threatened more than just the project. Talon paused as their waiter approached with menus, waiting until they were alone again. But here's what doesn't make sense. The day after the accident, my mother visited the Hayes Industries archives. Isabella felt her breath catch. Your mother? Catherine Hayes. A shadow crossed his face. She died 2 weeks later. Car accident on Lakeshore Drive. Single vehicle, no witnesses. The implications hung heavy in the air between them. Isabella studied Talon's face, seeing the cost of these revelations in the tension around his eyes. So why are you telling me this? Because I think our family's woe stories are connected in ways neither of us understands. He met her gaze directly. And because when I saw your designs for the new Maxwell project, I recognized something. You're unconsciously trying to solve problems your father identified 7 years ago. Before Isabella could respond, her phone buzzed. Ruby's name flashed on the screen. Her grandmother never called this late unless... Gran. What's wrong? Baby, it's your father. Ruby's voice was tight with worry. He's had some kind of episode. The neighbors found him wandering on the street, talking about old files and Catherine Hayes. He's asking for you. Isabella was on her feet instantly. I'm coming. Which hospital? Northwestern Memorial. He's in the ER. I'll have my driver take you, Talon said, already signaling for the check. Say it's faster than waiting for a ride service. She wanted to refuse, to maintain the careful distance between them, but practicality won out. Thank you. The ride to the hospital was tense, the city lights blurring past the luxury car's windows. Talon sat beside her in silence, his presence both unsettling and oddly comforting. When his hand found hers in the darkness, she didn't pull away. The emergency room was organized chaos. Ruby waited by the entrance, her bright shawl a splash of color against institutional beige walls. She hugged Isabella tight, then looked past her at Talon with shrewd eyes. You must be Richard's boy, she said. You have your mother's eyes. Talon looked startled. You knew my mother. Honey, there's a lot about those days you don't know. Ruby's expression softened. But right now William needs his daughter. Isabella found her father in a curtained alcove, looking small and pale against white hospital sheets. His eyes lit up when he saw her, but there was a wildness in them that scared her. Princess, he whispered, using her childhood nickname. I saw Catherine today, in my dreams, but so real. She was trying to tell me something about the files. Dad, Catherine Hayes passed away years ago. Isabella took his hand, shocked by how cold it felt. You were dreaming. No, He clutched at her arm. The proof was in the archives. She found it, just like I did. That's why they... A doctor appeared, chart in hand. Mr. Warner? I'm Dr. Martinez. We're going to run some tests, but it looks like a combination of stress and his medication caused this episode. While the doctor spoke with Ruby about treatment options, Isabella stepped into the hallway, needing a moment to breathe. She found Talon standing by a window, staring out at the city lights. "Your father mentioned my mother," he said without turning. "He's not the first person to suggest her death wasn't an accident. What are you saying?" "I'm saying that maybe both our families were torn apart because they discovered the same truth." He turned to face her, and the raw emotion in his expression made her heart stutter. "Help me find it, Isabella. Help me understand what happened to them. To all of us." A nurse walked past, squeaking shoes echoing in the quiet hallway. Somewhere, a monitor beeped steadily. Isabella thought about her father's wild eyes, about Catherine Hayes's death, about secrets buried in corporate archives. "If we do this," she said slowly, "we do it my way. No more surprises, no more hidden agendas." "Agreed." Talon stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and masculine that made her pulse quicken. "So partners?" "Partners," she whispered, knowing she was stepping into dangerous waters but unable to stop herself. "But Talon, if I find out you're lying about any of this..." "I know." His eyes held hers. "You'll destroy me yourself." Later that night, after her father had been sedated and Ruby had finally gone home to rest, Isabella sat in the hospital cafeteria, staring at a cup of terrible coffee. Her phone lit up with a text from Talon. "Check your email. Sending you everything I have. Whatever happens next, you deserve to know the truth." As she opened the files on her phone, another message appeared from an unknown number. "Stop looking. Some secrets are buried for a reason." In his penthouse apartment across town, Talon stood at his window, piano music playing softly in the background, his mother's favorite nocturne. On his desk, a photo of Catherine Hayes smiled at him, her secret still safely hidden in the shadows of the past. For now, dawn crept over Chicago, painting the hospital windows in soft gold. Isabella had spent the night in an uncomfortable chair beside her father's bed, her laptop balanced precariously on her knees as she pored over the files Talon had sent. The more she read, the more questions emerged. A soft knock drew her attention. Ruby stood in the doorway, holding 2 cups of coffee from the corner bean. Real coffee, not the hospital's bitter attempt. "You look like you haven't slept," Ruby said, handing her a cup. "Those must be some interesting files." Isabella glanced at her father, still sleeping peacefully. "Did you know Catherine Hayes was investigating something before she died?" Ruby settled into the other chair, her usual vibrant energy subdued. "Catherine was a good woman. Too good, maybe, for the world she married into." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "She came to see your daddy, you know, 2 days before the accident." "What?" Isabella straightened. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because some memories are like broken glass, baby. They cut deeper every time you touch them." Ruby's eyes grew distant. She was scared that day, not for herself. Catherine was never the type to fear for herself. She was worried about her son, Talon. She said something was wrong at Hayes Industries, something that went beyond normal business. Ruby's fingers twisted in her shawl. "The next time I saw her was at her funeral." "Your daddy." That's when he started to change. Said it should have been him instead. Isabella's coffee grew cold in her hands as implications spiraled through her mind. Before she could ask more questions, her phone buzzed with a text from Talon. "Meeting in 20 usual place." She looked at Ruby, who nodded. "Go. I'll stay with him." The corner bean was quiet this early. Talon occupied their corner table, looking like he'd had as little sleep as she had. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his usually perfect hair showed signs of running his hands through it repeatedly. "And your mother visited my father," Isabella said without preamble, sliding into the seat across from him. "Before she died." "I know. I found her calendar last night." Talon pushed a tablet toward her. "Look at this. The day before she died, she made 3 calls. 1 to William Warner, 1 to a law firm that no longer exists, and 1 to a journalist named Michael Chen, the journalist who died in that boating accident. The same. Talon's voice was tight. 3 people connected to whatever was happening at Hayes Industries, all dead or destroyed within months of each other. Isabella pulled out her laptop, opening the files she'd been studying. There's more. I found something in my father's original report, a reference to soil samples from the Maxwell site. The results were never filed, but there's a notation about sample B47 being sent to an independent lab. B47? Talon frowned. That number appears in my mother's personal notes, but I thought it was a bank account or property reference. We need those soil samples. Isabella leaned forward, lowering her voice. If my father found environmental hazards and your mother confirmed them, it would explain why they shut down the original project so fast. Talon ran a hand through his hair. But why kill for it? Environmental issues can be managed, remediated, unless— Isabella's eyes widened. Unless what they found was worse than contaminated soil, something that would trigger federal investigations. Their eyes met across the table, the same realization hitting them both. Isabella saw the moment Talon made his decision. I can get us into the Hayes Industries archives tonight, he said. Security will be minimal. There's a board dinner that everyone attends. That's breaking and entering. Not if I have keys. His smile held no humor. Besides, technically, I own part of the building. Isabella should have said no. Breaking into corporate archives was career suicide at best, criminal at worst, but she thought of her father in that hospital bed, of Catherine Hayes's final days of fear, of Michael Chen's mysterious accident. I need to stop by my apartment first, she said. If we're doing this, I need to change. Hours later, Isabella stood in her bedroom, Ruby's knowing gaze following her as she changed into dark clothes that wouldn't attract attention. Just be careful, baby girl. Ruby's voice was soft. Not just of getting caught, be careful of your heart. This isn't about that, Gran. No. Then why do your eyes light up every time your phone buzzes with his messages? Isabella paused in the middle of pulling her hair back. He's different than I expected. More human, Ruby smiled. Love has a way of complicating our neat little boxes of right and wrong. I don't love him. But even as she said it, Isabella knew something had shifted. Somewhere between accusations and investigations, between anger and understanding, Talon Hayes had become more than just a name she was supposed to hate. The Hayes Industries building was eerily quiet after hours. Their footsteps echoed in marble halls as Talon led her to a secure elevator. His keycard granted them access to the sub-basement where the archives were kept. The oldest files are in the back, he whispered, though they were alone. Environmental reports would be in Section E. They worked in silence, flashlights casting dancing shadows as they searched through boxes and files. The air was thick with dust and secrets, making Isabella's skin prickle with awareness, both of their illicit activity and of Talon's presence behind her. Here, her fingers closed around a thick folder labeled Maxwell Development, Environmental Survey B47. This is it. Talon moved closer, his chest brushing her back as he looked over her shoulder. The contact sent electricity down her spine, but before either could react, a sound froze them both. Footsteps, coming closer. Talon reacted instantly, pulling her into a narrow space between filing cabinets. His body shielded her from view as flashlight beams swept the room. Isabella held her breath, achingly aware of every point where they touched, of his heartbeat strong and rapid against her palm. The footsteps passed, then faded. Security patrol. Talon breathed against her ear. They'll be back in 15 minutes. Isabella tilted her head back to look at him, a mistake that brought their faces inches apart. In the dim light, his eyes were dark with an emotion that had nothing to do with their investigation. Talon, she whispered, not sure if it was a warning or an invitation. He traced her cheek with gentle fingers, and she felt the tremor in his touch. I know I'm supposed to be your enemy, he murmured, but I don't think I can be. Not anymore. The file pressed between them like a physical manifestation of their shared purpose, but in that moment, with his lips hovering above hers, purpose faltered. Years of family history, of pain and mistrust, crashed against the reality of now, of his warmth, his integrity, his determination to uncover the truth no matter the cost. A distant door slammed, breaking the spell. We need to go, Talon said, his voice rough. Now. They made it out just as voices echoed down the corridor. In Talon's car, speeding away from the building, Isabella clutched the stolen file and tried to steady her racing heart. "By my place," she said. "We'll need Ruby's help to understand what we found. She knows more than she's been telling us." Talon nodded, but his knuckles were white on the steering wheel. They both knew that tonight had changed things, not just in their investigation, but between them. The line between allies and something more had blurred, and neither was sure they wanted to redraw it. In the back seat, the stolen file waited to reveal its secrets, unaware that it wasn't the only thing that had been unearthed in those dusty archives tonight. Ruby's hands trembled as she spread the stolen environmental reports across her kitchen table. Outside, Chicago's night pressed against the windows, but inside, the warm yellow light made the room feel like a sanctuary. The old record player spun quietly in the corner, Sam Cooke's gentle voice a counterpoint to the tension in the air. "Lord have mercy," Ruby whispered, her reading glasses perched on her nose as she examined page after page. Catherine was right. All this time, she was right. Isabella and Talon sat across from her, shoulders almost touching. Neither had mentioned their moment in the archives, but the electricity between them remained, crackling like static before a storm. "What exactly are we looking at, Mrs. Warner?" Talon asked, his voice gentle with respect. "First, you call me Ruby like everyone else does." She looked up, fixing him with a penetrating stare. "And what we're looking at is proof that Hayes Industries didn't just find contaminated soil, they found bodies." Isabella's breath caught. "Say bodies?" Construction crews uncovered an old industrial dump site while testing for the original Maxwell project. Ruby tapped a particular page. "Chemical waste from the 1960s, all illegal disposal, but mixed in with the chemicals." She paused, her voice growing heavy. "They found human remains." "That's impossible." Talon stood abruptly, pacing the small kitchen. "There would have been investigations, media coverage, unless someone made sure there weren't." Isabella's mind raced. "The project was shut down immediately after Dad's report. The land has been untouched for 7 years, but now they're building again," Talon finished. "Different company, different permits, same secrets." Ruby removed her glasses, suddenly looking every one of her 76 years. "Catherine came to me first, you know. Before she went to William, she had proof that Hayes Industries executives knew about the dump site decades ago, had been paying to keep it quiet all this time." Talon stopped pacing. "My father? He was new to the company then, but yes, he knew." Ruby's eyes softened with compassion. "Your mother couldn't live with it, baby. That's why she started digging, why she reached out to Michael Chen, the journalist." Isabella breathed. She was going to expose everything. A sudden bang made them all jump, but it was just the wind catching the screen door, or at least that's what Isabella told herself. Still, she noticed how Talon moved to check the locks, how his eyes scanned the darkness beyond the windows. "We need to move quickly," he said, returning to the table. "If anyone realizes what we took from the archives," as if summoned by his words. Isabella's phone buzzed. "An unknown number. Your father's condition has stabilized, but accidents can still happen. Stop now." She showed the message to Talon, watching his face harden. "They're watching us, not just us." He pulled out his own phone, displaying a similar message. "Catherine's death can be repeated. Walk away." Ruby stood, her small frame radiating determination. "Let me make some calls. There are people from those days, people who might talk now that we have proof." "It's too dangerous," Isabella protested. "Baby girl, I'm old enough to choose my own dangers." Ruby touched the pendant at Isabella's throat, her mother's necklace. "Catherine died trying to right this wrong. Your daddy lost everything trying to protect people. Sometimes the most dangerous thing is doing nothing." Later, after Ruby had gone upstairs to make her mysterious calls, Isabella and Talon sat on the porch swing, watching lightning flicker in the distance. The approaching storm matched their mood, electric, uncertain, charged with possibility and threat. "I'm sorry," Talon said suddenly, "about my father, about yours, about all of it." "It's not your fault." Isabella turned to face him. "You were just a kid when it happened, but I'm not a kid now." His voice was rough with emotion. "I spent years believing in a legacy built on lies, wanting to make my father proud, wanting to be worthy of the Hayes name." He laughed bitterly. What a joke. Without thinking, Isabella reached for his hand. His fingers intertwined with hers immediately, like they'd been waiting for this moment. "You are worthy," she said softly. "You're nothing like him. You're trying to fix things, to find the truth." The truth. He shifted closer, close enough that she could see the storm reflected in his eyes. "Want to know the truth, Isabella? I'm terrified. Not of my father, not of the threats. I'm terrified of how much I care about you." The confession hung in the humid air between them. Isabella's heart thundered in her chest, drowning out even the distant rumble of thunder. "Talon, I know." His free hand came up to cup her cheek. "I know all the reasons this is impossible. Our families, the investigation, the danger. But when I'm with you..." A crash from inside the house shattered the moment. They were on their feet instantly, rushing inside to find Ruby's phone smashed on the kitchen floor. "Gran!" Isabella called, panic rising in her throat. "Ruby!" They found her in the study, clutching a stack of old photographs. Her face was ashen. "They got to Lawrence," she whispered. "My old friend from the construction company. He was going to tell us everything, but..." She looked up at them with tears in her eyes. "They found him an hour ago. Car accident. On Lakeshore Drive. Just like Catherine Hayes." Talon's phone rang. Dominic Russell. He answered on speaker. "Dom, get out of there. Now." Dominic's voice was urgent. "Your father knows about the break-in. He's called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. Tal, he's going to strip you of your position, your access, everything, and that's if you're lucky." Isabella met Talon's gaze, seeing her own determination reflected back. "We need to get these files somewhere safe," she said. "Somewhere public. I know someone." Ruby stood straighter, wiping her tears. "A federal prosecutor I used to work with. She's retired now, but she still has connections." "Go," Dominic urged through the phone. "Don't tell me where. Just be careful." As they rushed to gather the evidence, the storm finally broke over Chicago. Rain lashed against the windows, and lightning turned the night into stuttering snapshots of urgency. In the chaos, Isabella felt Talon's hand find hers again. "Whatever happens," he said, his voice barely audible over the storm, "we're in this together now." She squeezed his hand, knowing that she was choosing this, choosing him, despite everything that said she shouldn't. Together. Above them, thunder rolled across the city like a warning, or maybe, Isabella thought, like applause for an act of defiance years in the making. Either way, there was no turning back now. The truth, once uncovered, demanded to be heard, no matter the cost. Rain drummed against the roof of Talon's Audi as they sped through Chicago's northern suburbs. The sealed envelope of evidence sat heavy in Isabella's lap, while Ruby's contact information for the federal prosecutor was safely stored in her phone. In the driver's seat, Talon's profile was illuminated by occasional flashes of lightning, his jaw set with determination. "I take the next exit," Isabella directed, watching their GPS route carefully. The prosecutor, retired Judge Evelyn Montgomery, lived in Lake Forest, in a historic mansion that doubled as a bed and breakfast. "We should be there in 20 minutes. Talon checked the rearview mirror for the third time in as many minutes. "We're being followed." Isabella turned to look through the rain-streaked back window. A black SUV held position several car lengths behind them, its headlights cutting through the storm. "Are you sure it's them?" "Same vehicle that was parked outside Ruby's house." His hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Hold on." He executed a series of quick turns through residential streets, his training in defensive driving becoming evident. The SUV stayed with them, but at least now they were sure this was no coincidence. Isabella's phone rang, Ruby's ringtone. "Gran, are you okay?" "I'm fine, baby, but listen carefully." Ruby's voice was tense. "Don't go to Evelyn's. They're watching her house. Richard Hayes's men got there first." "How did they know?" Talon demanded, loud enough for Ruby to hear. "Because Evelyn called them." Ruby's sigh crackled through the speaker. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. She's been on their payroll for years. Ever since Catherine's accident." Isabella felt sick. Another connection, another piece of the puzzle revealing just how deep the corruption went. "Where do we go now?" "The lake house," Talon said suddenly. "My mother's old property in Door County. Nobody knows about it except..." He glanced at Isabella. "Except my father, but he thinks I sold it years ago." "You kept it." It was the last place I saw her happy. The simple admission carried weight, like a door opening between them. Ruby's voice cut through the moment. "Baby girl, William's awake. He's asking for you both. Both of us." Isabella exchanged a look with Talon. "Says he needs to tell you something about Catherine. Something he should have said 7 years ago." Talon's expression tightened. "We can't go back to the hospital. They'll be watching." "Already handled," Ruby said, a hint of pride in her voice. "Your friend Dominic arranged a transfer to a private facility. Text me when you're close. I'll send you the location." After ending the call, Isabella studied their options on her phone. "If we take the back roads through Wisconsin, we can reach Door County by morning. See your father first, then head to the lake house." "It's too risky," Talon argued. "My father has been lying to both of us our entire lives." Isabella touched his arm gently. "Don't you want to know why?" The SUV behind them suddenly accelerated, its headlights flooding their car. Talon swerved as it tried to force them off the road, his skilled hands keeping them steady on the wet pavement. Hold on!" he shouted, executing a sharp turn onto a narrow service road. The SUV shot past their turnoff, unable to correct in time. They sat in silence for a moment, hearts racing, rain pounding on the roof. Then Talon reached over and took her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. "Are you okay?" "Yes." Isabella tried to steady her breathing, all too aware of how his touch sent electricity through her veins, despite, or perhaps because of, the danger. "Talon, if something happens, nothing's going to happen to you." His voice was fierce with protection, with something deeper neither of them was ready to name. "I won't let it." "That's not what I meant." She turned in her seat to face him. "If something happens, I need you to know that I don't blame you for any of it. What your father did, it's not your legacy to carry." Lightning flashed, illuminating the raw emotion in his eyes. For a moment, Isabella thought he might kiss her, right there in a storm, with danger on their heels. Instead, he brought their joined hands to his lips, pressing a kiss to her fingers that felt like a promise. "We should move," he said roughly. "They'll figure out where we went soon enough." The private medical facility was a converted mansion on the outskirts of Milwaukee, its brick facade dark against the stormy sky. Ruby met them at a side entrance, her bright shawl like a beacon in the gloom. "He's lucid," she said as she led them through quiet halls. "More than he's been in years, but—" she hesitated. "Whatever he tells you, remember that he thought he was protecting everyone." William Warner sat propped up in bed, looking smaller than Isabella remembered, but with clear eyes that brightened when he saw them. "Catherine's boy," he said, reaching for Talon's hand. "You look just like her, Mr. Warner." Talon's voice was gentle as he took the offered hand. "You wanted to tell us something. About your mother. About why—" He coughed, and Isabella quickly helped him sip some water. "The bodies they found, they weren't just dumping victims, they were witnesses." Isabella felt Talon go still beside her. Witnesses to what? Money laundering, weapons trafficking. Hayes Industries wasn't just a construction company in the 60s. It was a front for organized crime. The chemical waste dump was where they— William's voice broke. "Where they dealt with problems." "Dad!" Isabella's heart ached. "Why didn't you go to the police?" "Because of the list." William's eyes found Talon's. "Your mother found a list of names. People still in power. People who could hurt you. Hurt Isabella. She came to me for help hiding it." "Where is it now?" Talon asked. "The lake house." William smiled faintly. Catherine's favorite place. She hid it there in the one spot Richard would never think to look. Behind the— A noise in the hallway made them all freeze. Footsteps, multiple sets, approaching quickly. "Go!" William urged. "The back stairs. Ruby knows the way." "Dad, no, we can't leave you." "Yes, you can." Her father's voice was stronger now, more like the man she remembered. "I've hidden from the truth for 7 years. Time for you to find it." Ruby appeared at the door. "Now, children, while we still have time." As they hurried through the dark building, Isabella felt Talon's hand firm against her lower back, guiding her. Behind them, they heard voices, familiar voices. Richard Hayes had found them. They emerged into the rain-soaked parking lot. Talon's car was waiting, engine running. As they sped away, Isabella saw figures burst out of the building, but it was too late. They were already gone, racing toward Door County and whatever secrets Catherine Hayes had died protecting. In the back seat, Ruby clutched her bright shawl around her shoulders. Catherine always said the truth would come out someday. Guess someday is finally here. Isabella looked at Talon, seeing the same mix of fear and determination she felt reflected in his face. They were past the point of no return now. Whatever waited at the lake house would either save them both or destroy everything they'd ever known. Somehow, watching him drive through the storm with such quiet strength, Isabella found she didn't care which, as long as they faced it together. Dawn broke over Lake Michigan in ribbons of pink and gold, the storm finally clearing, as they turned onto the private road leading to Catherine Hayes's lake house. Tall pines lined the drive, their branches still dripping from the night's rain. In the passenger seat, Isabella fought exhaustion while Ruby dozed in the back, her bright shawl serving as a makeshift blanket. "So I haven't been here in 6 years," Talon said softly, bringing the car to a stop before a sprawling cedar-sided home. "Not since your father told you to sell it," Isabella finished, watching his face carefully. "I told him I did, showed him fake paperwork and everything." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "My first real act of rebellion." They stepped out into the crisp morning air, the lake breeze carrying memories of summers past. Isabella could almost see it. A younger Talon, a beautiful woman with his eyes, finding peace away from Richard Hayes's suffocating control. Ruby stirred, joining them on the gravel drive. "My word," she breathed, taking in the property. "Catherine told me about this place, but seeing it, Mom called it her sanctuary." Talon retrieved their bags, including the precious envelope of evidence. "She used to say the lake kept secrets better than any vault in Chicago." The front door's lock yielded to Talon's key, revealing an interior frozen in time. Sheets draped the furniture like shrouds, but beneath them, Isabella could see elegant pieces chosen with care. Family photos lined the walls. Talon as a child, Catherine's bright smile, even a few with Richard before power had hardened him. "The list," Ruby said, all business despite her fatigue. William said Catherine hid it somewhere specific. "Behind something," Isabella added, remembering her father's interrupted revelation. Talon stood in the center of the living room, turning slowly as if reorienting himself in the space. She loved this room, used to sit at that piano for hours, playing Chopin while the sun set. As if drawn by his words, Isabella moved to the baby grand piano, its sheet-covered form dominating one corner. Gently, she lifted the fabric, revealing gleaming black wood and ivory keys. "It's beautiful. She taught me to play here." Talon joined her, his fingers ghosting over the keys without pressing them. Said music was the only language that never lied. Ruby watched them from across the room, her eyes sharp despite her exhaustion. What else never lied to her baby? What did Catherine trust besides her music? Talon went still. "The stars," he whispered. "She had a telescope. We used to—" He turned suddenly, striding to the far wall where a large mirror hung between two windows. "Help me with this." Together, they lifted the heavy mirror away from the wall, revealing a small wall safe behind it. Talon's hands shook slightly as he reached for the dial. "The combination," Isabella said. "Do you know it?" Her favorite constellation. His fingers moved decisively. Lyra, the harp. "The musician's stars." The safe clicked open. Inside lay a single manila envelope, sealed with wax, and a letter addressed to "my son." Talon stared at his mother's handwriting for a long moment before carefully opening the letter. "My dearest Talon," he read, his voice rough with emotion. "If you're reading this, then you've finally found your way back to our sanctuary, and you're ready to know the truth. The evidence in this envelope proves what Hayes Industries really is, what your father has tried to hide for decades, but more importantly, it proves that monsters can have consciences. Richard wasn't always what he became. There was a time when he wanted to expose everything himself. Ask him about Operation Nightshade. Ask him about December 12th, 1989. Ask him why he changed his mind. And my darling boy, whatever you discover, remember that you are not your father's sins. You are my heart, my truth, my brightest star. All my love, Mom." Silence filled the room as the letter's implications sank in. Isabella moved closer to Talon, drawn by the pain and confusion radiating from him in waves. December 12th, 1989, Ruby mused. That's the day Catherine and Richard got engaged. Talon's head snapped up. How do you know that? Because that's the day everything changed. Ruby sank into an armchair, suddenly looking every one of her years. Richard came to the corporate Christmas party, looking like he'd seen a ghost. Catherine was glowing with that ring on her finger, but something scared him badly that night. A week later, he was promoted to junior partner, fast track to the top. They bought him, Isabella realized. They found out he was going to expose everything, so they gave him a choice, power or principles. And he chose power. Talon's voice was bitter. I chose it again when Mum found the evidence. Chose it every time. Isabella touched his arm gently. Talon. The sound of tires on gravel cut through the moment. Through the windows, they watched a familiar black SUV approach the house. How did they find us? Isabella moved away from the windows, mind racing. GPS. Talon's face hardened. My father still has access to my car's tracking system. He turned to Ruby. Is there a back way out? The boathouse, Ruby said, already moving. Catherine showed me the plans once. There's a tunnel, a Prohibition-era escape route. They grabbed their essentials, the evidence, Catherine's letter, their phones. As footsteps approached the front door, they slipped through the kitchen and out the back, running toward the boathouse that perched on the water's edge. Inside, Ruby found the hidden door while Talon and Isabella pushed an old rowboat across the entrance behind them. They descended narrow stairs, just as voices echoed from above. The tunnel was dark and damp, lit only by their phone flashlights. Isabella felt Talon's hand find hers in the darkness, squeezing gently. Ahead, Ruby moved with surprising sureness, as if she'd known this escape route all along. There's a road about half a mile from the tunnel exit, she whispered. Old logging track. I can call a friend to pick us up. Wait. Talon pulled them to a stop. Listen. From somewhere behind them came the sound of pursuit. Richard Hayes's men had found the tunnel entrance. Go, Talon said, releasing Isabella's hand. I'll hold them off. No. Isabella grabbed his arm. We do this together, remember? In the dim light, she saw the conflict in his eyes, the instinct to protect warring with something deeper, something that had been growing between them since that first meeting in her presentation. I can't lose you too, he whispered. Then don't. She took his hand again, firmly. But you're not losing yourself either. Not to him. Not again. Ruby's voice drifted back to them. Children. Less romance, more running, please. They ran, following Ruby's lead through the twisting tunnel. Behind them, flashlight beams bounced off wet walls, voices echoing with increasing urgency. But ahead, a faint grey light promised morning, promised escape. As they emerged into the dense woods, Isabella realized they still held hands. Even as they ran for their lives, even as Richard Hayes's men closed in, even as the weight of decades of secrets threatened to crush them, they held on. Because sometimes, she was learning, the only way to face the darkness was to find someone willing to run toward the light with you. The old logging road stretched before them like a scar through the Wisconsin forest. Ruby's friend, a retired mechanic named Louis, who owed her more favors than years in his life, had picked them up in his weathered pickup truck, asking no questions about their mud-stained clothes or haunted expressions. Operation Nightshade, Talon murmured, reading through his mother's letter again as they bounced along the uneven road. Why does that sound familiar? Isabella, squeezed between him and Ruby in the truck's cab, pulled out her phone. The evidence files they'd photographed glowed on the screen as she scrolled. Here, it's mentioned in one of the older reports. A cleanup operation in 1989, right before your father's promotion. December 12th, 1989, Ruby added softly. The day everything changed. Talon's phone buzzed. Dominic Russell. He answered on speaker. Dom, your father's called an emergency press conference for noon today. He's going to announce your removal from the company and frame you for corporate espionage. Dominic's voice crackled with urgency. Whatever you're planning, do it fast. Isabella checked the time. 9:47 a.m. We need to get back to Chicago. And do what? Talon's laugh held no humor. Walk into Hayes Industries and accuse my father of decades of corruption. He'll have security waiting. No, Ruby said, her eyes sparking with an idea. We don't go to him. We make him come to us. 20 minutes later, they sat in a small diner just outside Green Bay, planning their next move. Louis had left them with a borrowed car and a promise of discretion. "The Maxwell Development Press Conference," Isabella said, spreading architectural plans across the sticky Formica table. "It's scheduled for 3 p.m. today. Every major news outlet will be there. Along with the governor," Ruby added. "To us and the EPA representatives." Talon studied the venue layout, the grand atrium of Hayes Industries' downtown headquarters. "Security will be tight. We'll never get in." "We don't need to." Isabella's fingers traced the building's outline. "Look at these sightlines. The atrium's glass ceiling. It's one of my designs. The acoustics are perfect. If someone were to speak from the mezzanine level, their voice would carry to the entire room." Talon caught her meaning. "And the mezzanine security is lighter because it's mainly maintenance access. I can get you up there." Dominic's voice came through Talon's phone. "But you'll have about 2 minutes before security reaches you. 2 minutes to destroy everything my father built." Talon's voice was quiet. "Everything I thought I was supposed to become." Isabella took his hand under the table. 2 minutes to tell the truth, to finish what your mother started." Ruby cleared her throat. "There's something else you should know. About Catherine's accident." She pulled a faded photograph from her shawl. This was taken the day she died. The image showed Catherine Hayes leaving a small church, her face determined. "She wasn't going to the lake house that night," Ruby continued. "She was meeting someone, a priest who had heard confessions from one of the old Hayes Industries executives, someone who knew about Operation Nightshade. Father Michael O'Malley," Talon read from the back of the photo. "He's still alive, and still at St. Augustine's." Ruby's eyes held a mix of triumph and sadness. "I've been keeping tabs on him all these years, waiting for the right moment." Isabella's phone chimed with a news alert. On the screen, Richard Hayes stood at a podium, his silver hair perfect, his expression grave, as he announced an upcoming statement about disturbing discoveries of corporate theft and family betrayal. "He's starting early." Talon stood. "We need to move, now." The drive back to Chicago was tense, each mile bringing them closer to a confrontation years in the making. They split up, Ruby and Isabella heading to St. Augustine's, while Talon met Dominic to prepare for the press conference. "Be careful," Isabella said as they parted, her hand lingering on his arm. "You too." His eyes held hers, saying everything they hadn't found words for yet. "Isabella, if something happens—" She silenced him with a kiss, their first, quick and fierce and full of promise. "Nothing's going to happen. We're finishing this together." St. Augustine's rose before them, its Gothic spires piercing the midday sky. Father O'Malley was waiting in his office, ancient but alert, his roomy eyes brightening at the sight of Ruby. "I wondered when you'd come," he said, gesturing to the chairs before his desk. "When I saw the Maxwell Development announcement, history repeats itself, doesn't it?" "Tell us about Operation Nightshade," Isabella pressed. "Just tell us what Richard Hayes was going to expose." "Aye, Richard." The priest's smile held no warmth. Such a passionate young man he was, determined to clean up Hayes Industries. He had evidence of everything, the murders, the corruption, the toxic dumping. Came to me for guidance and for absolution, perhaps. What changed? They gave him a choice. Father O'Malley's voice dropped. The same choice they gave everyone who discovered the truth, power or death. But Richard, they added a twist for him. They threatened Catherine. Isabella felt her breath catch. Before they were married? Oh yes. You see, Catherine was investigating too, though Richard didn't know it then. They told him if he exposed the company she would have an accident, just like the others who had tried to talk. The priest sighed. So he chose power, thinking he was protecting her. But Catherine never stopped looking for the truth. And when she finally found it, they killed her anyway, Ruby finished, and made it look like an accident. I gave her last rites. Father O'Malley's eyes filled with tears. She knew, at the end, knew Richard had chosen wrong all those years ago. Her last words were about Talon, that he would choose differently when the time came. Isabella's phone buzzed. A text from Talon. In position. Press conference starting early. You ready? She looked at Ruby, who nodded. We're ready. Father O'Malley? The priest stood, reaching for his coat. Time to share one last confession. The Hayes Industries atrium was packed when they arrived. Richard Hayes stood at the podium, his voice carrying easily through the perfect acoustics Isabella had designed. Behind him, the afternoon sun streamed through the glass ceiling, casting his shadow long across the marble floor. "It pains me to announce," he was saying, "that my own son has betrayed the trust. Tell them about Operation Nightshade, Dad." Talon's voice rang out from the mezzanine, stopping his father mid-sentence. The crowd turned, cameras swiveling to capture the prodigal son standing above them, Catherine's letter in his hand. "Tell them what you were going to expose in 1989, Talon continued, his voice steady. "Before they threatened Mom." Richard Hayes went pale. "Security. They're a bit busy," Dominic called from his position blocking the mezzanine access. "Dealing with some rather interesting documents we just leaked to the FBI." Isabella and Ruby slipped through the crowd, Father O'Malley between them. The priest's voice, strengthened by decades of sermons, cut through the growing chaos. "I can testify to Richard Hayes's original confession, to what he knew about the murders, about Catherine's death." "It's over, Dad." Talon's voice held sadness rather than triumph. "Mom knew you chose wrong, but she believed you could choose right. Just once, at the end." For a moment, Richard Hayes stood frozen, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. Then, something in his face changed, softened, perhaps, or simply surrendered. "Catherine," he whispered, the microphone catching his voice. "I thought I was protecting her. You could have protected the truth instead." Talon descended the stairs slowly, the crowd parting before him. That's what she wanted, what she died for. As FBI agents entered the atrium, as cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions, Isabella made her way to Talon's side. His hand found hers automatically, their fingers intertwining like they'd been doing it for years instead of days. "You did it," she whispered. "We did it." He turned to her, and in his eyes she saw not victory but possibility, the chance to build something new from the ashes of their families' past. Behind them, Richard Hayes began to talk, spilling secrets held for decades. But Talon and Isabella barely heard him, too caught up in the future unfolding before them, a future they would face together, built on truth instead of lies, on love instead of fear. Ruby watched them from across the room, a smile playing at her lips. "About time," she murmured, adjusting her bright shawl. "Some gardens take a while to bloom." 1 year later, the Chicago skyline glowed golden in the late afternoon sun as Isabella stood at the newly completed Maxwell Development Observation Deck. Below her, families strolled through the memorial garden, a peaceful green space dedicated to the victims whose bodies had been found at the site. Each bench bore a small plaque, each tree a testament to lives lost and truth finally brought to light. "I thought I'd find you here." Talon's voice came from behind her, followed by his arms wrapping around her waist. "Admiring your handiwork." She leaned back against him, savoring the solid warmth of his presence, making sure the sightlines are perfect for tomorrow's dedication ceremony. "They're perfect." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Like everything else you design." The past year had transformed them both. After Richard Hayes's confession, the ensuing investigation had shaken Chicago's business community to its core. Old power structures crumbled, secrets emerged from decades of silence, and in the aftermath, something new had begun to grow. "Have you visited him lately?" Isabella asked softly, knowing Talon would understand. "Yesterday." His arms tightened slightly around her. "The prison therapist says he's making progress, actually talking about Mom now, about the choices he made, and the nightmares. Less frequent." Talon turned her in his arms, his storm-gray eyes holding a peace she'd watched grow slowly over the months. "Turns out facing the truth is better than running from it. Who knew?" Isabella smiled, reaching up to trace the laugh lines that had started appearing around his eyes. "I seem to remember someone's very wise grandmother saying something about that." Speaking of Ruby, Talon's expression turned suspiciously innocent. "She might have helped me with something this morning." "Oh," Isabella raised an eyebrow. "Is this about the mysterious errand that made you miss the contractor meeting?" "Actually," he stepped back, reaching into his pocket. "It's about this." The small velvet box he produced made Isabella's heart skip. Inside nestled a ring, elegant and understated, with a pattern of stars etched into the band. Ruby helped me find it in your mother's safety deposit box, Talon explained softly. Your dad had saved it all these years, said he was waiting for the right moment, the right person. Talon, Isabella's voice caught as he sank to one knee, the setting sun painting them both in gold. I had this whole speech planned, he said, looking up at her with naked emotion, about how you taught me that legacy isn't what we inherit, but what we choose to build, about how your strength made me stronger, your forgiveness taught me to forgive myself. He took her hand, his thumb brushing over her wrist, where the word resilient was tattooed. But really it comes down to this. I love you. Isabella Diane Warner. Will you marry me? Yes. The word came instantly, carrying the weight of everything they'd survived together. Yes, absolutely yes. The ring slid onto her finger as if it had been waiting for this moment all along. When Talon stood and pulled her into a kiss, she felt the last pieces of their shared story falling perfectly into place. Later that evening, they gathered in Ruby's backyard for an impromptu celebration. William Warner, now fully recovered and running a non-profit focused on corporate accountability, manned the grill while Ruby directed the placement of her signature string lights through the garden. Just like I always said, Ruby announced, adjusting her bright yellow shawl with satisfaction. New gardens from old ground. Dominic Russell raised his glass in agreement. After the scandal broke, he'd left corporate law to work with William's organization, finding his own path to redemption, to new beginnings, and old wisdom, Talon added, smiling at Ruby. Father O'Malley, who had become a regular at these family gatherings, nodded sagely. The truth has a way of blooming, even in the darkest soil. Isabella looked around at these people who had become her chosen family, survivors and truth-tellers, each carrying their own scars, but choosing to grow anyway. Her father caught her eye from across the yard, his smile proud and peaceful. They'd healed together, all of them, finding strength in the very breaks that could have shattered them. "Say, Penny, for your thoughts," Talon murmured in her ear as Ruby started organizing an impromptu dance party on the patio. "Just thinking about the Maxwell Memorial," Isabella said, turning in his arms. "The plaque we chose, 'From Truth, Healing Grows,'" he quoted softly. "Catherine would have liked that. She'd like this too." Isabella gestured to their gathered family. "All of us, choosing love over fear, building something new." The music shifted to Sam Cooke's "A Change Is Gonna Come," Ruby's favorite. As the soulful notes filled the evening air, Talon pulled Isabella closer, swaying with her under the string lights. "Speaking of building something new," he said, "I had an idea about the lake house." "Oh, Mom always said it was a sanctuary. Maybe it could be that again." "For us?" Isabella studied his face, seeing the hope there, the gentle determination to transform painful places into peaceful ones. "I might have some design ideas," she teased. "I bet you do." His smile was tender as he traced the ring on her finger. Partner. The word held layers of meaning, professional, personal, profound. They were partners in all ways now, building a future neither of them could have imagined a year ago. Around them, their family danced and laughed. The garden bloomed with Ruby's careful tending, and Chicago's skyline glittered with possibility. Later that night, as they drove home along Lakeshore Drive, Isabella thought about choices, about Richard Hayes choosing power over truth and Catherine choosing truth over safety, about her father choosing to trust again and Ruby choosing to keep faith all those years. But mostly, she thought about her own choice, their choice to believe in something stronger than old wounds and inherited pain, to build new foundations on ground that once seemed poisoned beyond repair. As if reading her thoughts, Talon took her hand across the console, his thumb brushing over her engagement ring. Above them, stars pierced the city's glow, Lyra among them, the musicians' constellation, keeping watch over truth-tellers and love stories. "Ready to start designing our future?" he asked softly. Isabella squeezed his hand, feeling the perfect rightness of this moment, this love, this carefully constructed piece. "Always," she answered, "as long as we build it together." And in the end, that was the truest foundation of all. 5 years later, the lake house had changed, yet somehow remained exactly the same. Isabella stood on the rebuilt deck, watching the sunrise paint Lake Michigan in shades of amber and rose. Behind her, through the wide windows she'd designed, She could see Talon at the baby grand piano, teaching their 3-year-old daughter, Catherine Ruby Hayes, how to pick out a simple melody. "Like this, sweetheart," his voice drifted out, "just like Grandma used to play." Little Catherine, Katie to everyone except Ruby, who insisted on using her full name, placed her tiny fingers on the keys with all the serious concentration a toddler could muster. Her dark curls and golden brown skin came from Isabella, but those grey eyes were all Talon, currently narrowed in fierce determination. "She's got the Hayes intensity," William Warner chuckled, joining Isabella on the deck with 2 cups of coffee. "And the Warner stubbornness." "Poor kid," Isabella smiled, accepting a cup. "She never had a chance." They watched the lake in comfortable silence. Her father had aged well since the truth came out, the shadows in his eyes replaced by a hard-won peace. He split his time between running his foundation and spoiling his granddaughter, with frequent breaks to help Ruby tend her ever-expanding garden. "Your mother would have loved this place," he said softly. "Either way, you've transformed it, made it a real home." Isabella touched the pendant at her throat, her mother's necklace, now paired with her wedding ring. "Sometimes I think she knows, her and Catherine both." Inside, Katie's delighted laugh rang out as she managed to play a correct sequence of notes. Talon's deeper chuckle joined in, the sounds of joy echoing through the house that had once held so many secrets. The renovation had been their first major project together. Isabella's design vision, combined with Talon's determination to honor his mother's memory while creating something new. They'd kept the bones of the old place but opened it up, letting in light and air. The piano remained the heart of the home, but now it was surrounded by colorful children's toys, family photos, and Ruby's hand-crocheted blankets. Speaking of transformations, William nodded toward the folder on the deck table. The latest reports from the Maxwell site are impressive. The development had become a model for sustainable urban renewal. The memorial garden was just the beginning. Now the complex included affordable housing, green spaces, and a community center that offered free legal aid to corporate whistleblowers. Each element incorporated designs that honored both the site's tragic history and its potential for healing. "Richard asked to see the quarterly updates," Isabella said quietly. "His therapist thinks it's good for his recovery." William nodded. They all carried complicated feelings about Richard Hayes. His full confession had helped bring justice to dozens of families, but the weight of his choices still rippled through their lives. He would be eligible for parole soon, and they were all learning how to navigate that reality. The deck door slid open as Talon emerged with Katie in his arms. "Someone wants to show Grandpa her new piano skills." "Is that right, Princess?" William's whole face lit up as he took his granddaughter. "Let's hear it then." As they headed inside, Talon wrapped his arms around Isabella from behind, their favorite position for watching the lake. Ruby called. "She's bringing dinner later with some mysterious special announcement." $10 says she's finally letting Louis move in." Isabella smiled, leaning back against him. "No bet. She's been not so subtly rearranging her furniture for weeks." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Happy?" The question was one they often asked each other, a gentle check-in that had become part of their shared language. Isabella turned in his arms, taking in the face she knew better than her own. The laugh lines deeper now, the grey eyes bright with contentment. "Very," she said softly. "You, more than I ever thought possible." His smile turned thoughtful. "I was thinking, maybe it's time to expand the sanctuary idea." "What do you mean?" "The Foundation's been getting more requests for safe spaces, places where whistleblowers and their families can stay while cases are pending, places like this, away from pressure and threats." Isabella's mind immediately started sketching possibilities. "A network of sanctuary properties, with your designs, my business connections, and Dad's foundation resources." Talon's eyes held that familiar mix of determination and hope that still made her heart skip. "What do you think?" Before she could answer, Katie's voice rang out from inside. "Mama, Daddy, listen." They turned to see their daughter perched on William's lap at the piano, her small fingers picking out the first notes of "A Change Is Gonna Come." Ruby's influence, obviously. The morning sun streamed through windows that no longer held shadows, warming the space that had become more than just a house. "I think," Isabella said, taking Talon's hand, "that some sanctuaries are meant to grow." his fingers intertwined with hers, wedding rings catching the light. Above them, a pair of swallows darted and swooped, building their nest in the eaves, returning, as they did every year, to the place they had chosen to call home. Inside, Katie continued her hesitant melody, William's gentle guidance blending with the sound of waves on the shore. And in that moment, standing between lake and love, past and future, Isabella felt the truth of what Ruby always said about gardens. The most beautiful ones grow where someone had the courage to break new ground. The end based on the emotional depth and themes of crossing paths. Here's an interesting question. If you discovered a dark truth about your family's past, a truth that could destroy everything you've built or heal decades of wounds, would you choose to expose it, even if it meant losing everything you thought you were supposed to become? Like Talon, would you choose the truth over legacy? And like Isabella, would you trust someone whose family had harmed yours if you saw that they were trying to make things right? Your participation in this channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment your thoughts. Your participation is very important to us. See you next time.